We are now on cycle 3. Cycle 3, we're going to start on page 42 of our book. So let's open up there. Starting with, what do we do now? What do we do now? I asked because the mud is still sucking me down. It's over my knees now, and the water is right up under my arms, and even Freak's feet are getting wet. Wait, Freak says. The cavalry is coming. Can't you hear the bugle? A cavalry is like a group of knights. So if you think about the King Arthur time that Freak is always referring to, the cavalry is a group of knights. Can't you hear that bugle? And the bugle is a horn. I'm listening, but I can't hear anything except for Blade and his gang, and how they're scrambling around trying to find some rocks to heave at us. I can see Blade rearing back to throw, and the first one misses us. Can't you move? Freak says. I don't think so. It's true, the mud is up over my knees and I'm locked in place. I can't even fall down, that's how stiff it is. I'm like a big fence post, and everybody knows a fence post makes a good target. More splashes as the rocks fall short. At first, they're throwing stuff that's too heavy. Pretty soon, they smarten up and Blade says, Smaller rocks! Get me smaller rocks! And I know in my heart we're doomed. Then up above me, there's this really loud, high-pitched screech. Freak has his fingers in his mouth and he's whistling, real shrill and shivery, and so loud it almost hurts my ears. And then I see what Freak has been seeing all along, a cop car cruising real slow along the road around the pond, which is what they always do after the fireworks. Freak is whistling, and the cop car spotlight comes beaming around the pond until it settles on us. I'm blinking because the light is so bright, and Freak is making a fuss and waving his arms, and we hear the metal megaphone sound of a cop voice ordering us not to move, like we could even if we wanted. It's hard to see in the glare of the spotlight, but Freak tells me that Blade and his punks are running away. Like snakes on sneakers, Freak says. Officers! Freak is shouting into the white light. We request assistance! They finally have to use ropes to pull me out of there. Freak won't let go. He stays right where he is on top of my shoulders, even when this cop in a boat tries to lift him off. And then we're up on the bank of the pond, and everybody is being real nice and giving us blankets and cokes and saying they know all about Tony D. They'll keep an eye on him, don't you worry. Okay, boys, you better give us your names and we'll call your mothers, this one cop is saying. And there's this other guy who is looking at me funny, and he says, Hey, isn't that Kenny Kane's boy? Must be. Old Killer Kane. Is he still inside? Freak is still holding tight to my shoulders, and when they ask him for his name, he says, We're Freak the Mighty, that's who we are. We're 9 feet tall, in case you haven't noticed. That's how it started, really. How we got to be Freak the Mighty, slaying dragons and fools and walking high above the world. Alright, so now we see where the name Freak the Mighty comes from. Let's look at this excerpt from page 44. It says, okay, boys, you better give us your names and we'll call your mothers, this one cop is saying. And there's this other guy who's looking at me funny, and he says, Hey, isn't that Kenny Kane's boy? Must be. Old Killer Kane, is he still inside? So Max typically refers to his father as him. I want you to write on this line, what is his real name, and what name does the police officer use to refer to him? What important information does this reveal? If you don't remember, look back in your book. Pause the video and answer that question. And our second question for this excerpt is, Max doesn't narrate any reaction or response to the police officer's statement. Like, our chapter ends just about right there, except Freak responds. Why doesn't he narrate any reaction or response? If someone talked to you like that, would you feel like responding? All right, pause the video if you need more time. Our second question, it's the line that comes right after this. It says, Freak is still holding tight to my shoulders when they ask him for his name. He says, We're Freak the Mighty, that's who we are. We're 9 feet tall, in case you haven't noticed. That's how it all started, really, how we got to be Freak the Mighty, slaying dragons and fools and walking high above the world. In the article we read, a new name can signal a new identity. What name does Freak tell the police officers? We'll look back, first part of this question, what name does he say? And then what new identity might this represent? What does that name mean? Like, what does it represent for Freak and Max? Alright, pause the video if you need more time. Our second question is, consider this moment from Kevin's perspective, so Freak's perspective. We're used to thinking of him as Freak because that's the name Max uses in his narration, but Max hasn't called him Freak in dialogue. Who uses the word freak most often in this chapter? How might that have impacted Kevin's choice of the name Freak the Mighty? So if you need to look back, because I'll give you a hint, it's not Kevin and it's not Max. They're not the ones calling Kevin Freak. Who's the one calling him that? And then, how do you think that influenced his choice of name, Freak the Mighty? When you're done, move on to your exit ticket.